It was just me and him. And we sat down across from chairs, and he didn't kill me right away because he was so shocked that I would find him.
That you showed up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought, if I'm going to die, I'm going to do it on my terms.
You've been listening to the Mountain Tough podcast.
Well, when I was growing up, I would evaluate that I was a coward. I mean, I was afraid of everything as a kid. And I had to actually retrain my brain to respond differently to fear. I didn't know how to get rid of fear. That was the material that just kept coming in. So I thought, okay, I can't get rid of this negative material, but I can learn how to use this negative material for a positive impact. So every time I was afraid, I moved in the direction of that fear. Whenever something terrified me, I actually did it. And I just moved. The stronger the fear, the faster my response. So what ended up happening is in my 20s, and you might know a little bit of this, but most people don't. You mentioned it before. I was shocked you even knew. But I spent about 10 years working in the world of drug cartels, gangs, assassins, the world of drugs and prostitution. I would walk into projects that were manned by soldiers with Uzi machine guns at every entryway, cocaine stacked to ceilings, weapons everywhere. And there were a cluster of people who made bets every day on what day I would be killed.
Jeez.
And I did this for about 10 years of my life. And, magazines and newspapers came and wrote about things I did back then. And they would assume I had no fear. But what actually happened is I turned fear into a positive fuel. Whenever I felt afraid, I moved toward it. And I remember I got a note from a guy in prison who had slit a guy's throat. And the guy didn't die, so he didn't go to prison for murder. He sent me a note saying when he got out of prison, he was going to kill me. And then a few months later, he sent me another note to let me know he hadn't forgotten me. that when he was getting out in a few months and he was going to kill me.
Jeez.
And what had happened was that the government project where his family lived, his common law wife, they all came to faith, and he felt I was infringing on his territory. And so, for him, it's just black and white. So when he got out of prison, I made a really conscious choice with, I cannot have William Westfall hunting me down. I can't live my life walking down the street wondering if he's waiting behind a corner.
Yeah.
So the moment he got out of prison, I went to the projects. I knocked on the door where he was staying, and I found him. And there's probably 20, 30 people in the little apartment. And when I walked in, they all ran out of the apartment. It was just me and him. And we sat down across from chairs, and he didn't kill me right away because he was so shocked that I would find him.
That you showed up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought, if I'm going to die, I'm going to do it on my terms. And I remember sitting across from him, and he pulls out this massive switchblade, and he said, "This is the same knife I slit his throat with." And he laughed. He goes, "The police never got it." He puts it on the table.
Unreal.
And I've never said this to anyone in my entire life. But in that moment, I looked at him and I said, "Bill, that knife is going to send you to hell." And I could not believe I said that. But what was better is he couldn't believe I said it. Yeah. And then I followed it up since I was still alive. And I said, "You think you're tough?" And then my brain said, "Shut up." What are you doing? And I said, "Well, you are tough, but you're not free. It's behind every corner someone waiting to kill you." And we had this intense conversation. Looked at me and he goes, "You and me, we're the same."
Oh, man.
Because you're insane. He goes, "I'm insane for evil, but you're insane for God." And I was able to enter places in those projects and in that world because that day William Westfall decided I was his friend. He walked out. I walked out with his respect.
Crazy.
And he basically let people know, if you kill him, I'm going to kill you. And it's always great to have a killer on your side, and a guy who doesn't play by the rules. And that was a huge part of my life in my 20s because I learned how to take this negative material, fear, and turn it into a positive fuel. It's the same way with pain. I don't want to take too long, but I learned very quickly that our relationship to pain is a direct relationship to our mental toughness. And we all know this, that pain is a liar. It always tells you that you can't take any more, that this is all you can go through, and enough is enough. And I'm 66 now, so I've broken almost everything on my body in some way or another. And even this year, I was playing a sport called padel. It's a racket sport with glass all the way around. I'm playing super intensely, and I ran and fell wrong, and my elbow was going in a completely different direction. My arm went in two directions at the same time. They had to, about 6 weeks ago, they had to rush me to the hospital, reattach my arm, the whole deal. And what I know about recovery, because when I went to the surgeon about 3 days later, I had almost 95% of all my mobility back, even though my arm was swollen like 5 to 6 times its size. And it's because when I broke my other elbow when I was in college, I knew that my mobility was completely related to my ability to handle pain.
Yeah.
And whenever I would break something or have a surgery, I would ask them, what's the world's record for recovery? And I would try to break the world's record every single time. And when I had stage 4 cancer about 10 years ago, and it had metastasized to 3 different parts of my body, and they had a 6.5-hour surgery to get all that cancer out of me. I remember they told me I had to have this catheter in for a month. I got it out in a week, and because no man should have that, and just shoved into his penis, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and they had set me up to lay in bed for months. I was on a basketball court 3 months from the day of that surgery. And the reason I'm saying this is because physically, we have absolute proof that recovery has everything to do with our ability to endure pain, our relationship to pain.
Yeah.
We don't realize psychologically it's exactly the same thing. A guy can be devastated because his girlfriend broke up with him, or you can be devastated because you lost a promotion, or devastated because you had a failure in your life. And your ability to recover from that pain, the speed at which you can recover from pain and push through it, is the degree to which you will have mental toughness.
Yeah.
There's just no question in my mind.
Yeah.
And because your greatness is on the other side of your pain, just like your freedom is on the other side of your failure, of your fear. Because I always saw fear as the boundary of my freedom. If I don't press through that fear, I will not be free. If I don't press through that pain, I will never achieve greatness. And then just the third one is failure. Failure is that third negative material that will shape our mental toughness. Take fear and see your freedom through it. Take pain and see your greatness through it. And take failure and see your future through it. How you relate to failure is a direct relationship to your internal self-belief. That's why I tell people, never say to a child, you're a failure. Never say to a child, you're a liar. Never say to a child, you're a bad kid. You never define a person by their worst behavior.